Well, maybe I'll tell you one more story, hospital story. Uh, I worked respirators for all ages. And we worked it for premature children. And one of the things that was happening was that premature children have a lack of surfactant. Surfactant, because they're premature, the lungs is one of the last things that they need. They don't need it when they're in the womb. They only need it when they're born. So the last thing that develops is this substance that makes the lungs soft so that they blow up easily and collapse easily. It makes it easy to breathe. It's like a balloon that you blow up, and after a while it gets easier to blow up. And so we had babies that we were not oxygenating. And my belief was that the pressure that we gave, because when you breathe, even humans, we do one part inhalation, and then we breathe out 4 times the amount of time period. So when we tried to deliver the air, we came up to a lung that was like a balloon that was new and wasn't stretching, and it would create the pressure in the lungs to rise, and there'd be safety outlets so you wouldn't blow the poor baby's lungs apart and put holes in them, and so the machine would stop. And so we weren't oxygenating. If you gave babies 100% oxygen, if you had to, you might aerate them, but you create a possibility of something called retrolental fibroplasia. And it blinds the children. Many blind people are people who are premature, and we had to oxygenate them, and to live, they had to pay the price of being blind. And it's the chance you take to keep them alive. And I kept telling the doctors, look, I believe we should slow up the flow of the oxygen and blow up their lungs with more time space, because exhaling, they exhale fast anyway because their lungs just collapse almost. Until the surfactant is created, a little bit later in their development, because they're premature. So maybe in a week or a month, the surfactant's developed, and then they breathe better. But it was our job to try to keep them alive till then, without hurting them. Well, doctors would listen, but they wouldn't do anything about it. As much as I would try to tell them that I believe I could oxygenate them, they would say, well, the respirator isn't designed for that, and we are just following the rules. Well, one day, months later, I had a baby that I was taking the blood gases to see how much oxygen and CO2 is in there, and I worked the machine to tell how effective we were. And this baby, for a couple of days, was showing that it was not going to make it. The baby was blue color. We weren't oxygenated, or grayish blue. And I asked this doctor, John Bloom, if I could change the respirator. And he said, Ken, I don't know. I said, look, I have proof that this baby is dying. What's going to happen to us if it dies? No one will care that we change the respirator, because we have days of this baby doing terrible. And so he said, okay, you write the order and I'll sign it. And so I did. And I remember it was toward the evening, because I worked the 3 to 11 shift. And he said, I'm going home for dinner, and told the nurse, give me a call if something happens. And he left, and I started working the respirator, changing it. And within minutes, that baby turned pink. And the nurse did call him and say, it's a miracle, but the baby's pink, And I took some blood gases and showed that we were oxygenated. I was able to lower the 100% oxygen, and the baby survived. And so the next day I get a phone call from Dr. Bloom, and he says, Ken, the head of the prenatal unit is very upset that we didn't confer with him. And I don't want you arguing with him. He's actually my partner, which I knew, and I'll deal with this. I said, okay. So later on, that was during the day, right? And I went to work that evening, and one of the first people I saw was my girlfriend. And I said to her, oh, I'm in trouble. Dr. Lip is angry because I did this. And she said, no, he's not. I said, what? Why? She goes, he came and gave a lecture at the university to our class, and his whole speech was on how his department revolutionized the use of the Bourne respirator. And he brought in all the blood gases, the whole thing, and talked about it, how and why it worked, etc. And I said, did he mention me? And she said, not a word. And so that was interesting and maybe very satisfying. And later on, what happened is that Dr. Bloom had me come to breakfast, and he offered me to live at his summer home where kids were breaking into on the weekend and partying, because they knew he hardly came to the summer home, and he had a heated swimming pool, and they party. They could hear the car coming if he came, and he asked me if I'd move in for $50 a month to this beautiful place in 11 acres. You had to ford a stream to get through and go up, and I did. And I lived there for a while, and then I realized for $50 a month, I didn't have to work. So, for a while, because I was so stressed out, and I actually quit respiratory therapy.